So coming up next, we've got Jez Hall. He's the director at Shared Future CIC. Jez has a background specialising in participatory budgeting with over 25 years of experience facilitating projects linked to local community empowerment, a very topical subject as we come up to the budgeting season. In today's talk, he'll be unpacking the fundamental principles and potential of participatory budgeting. He'll be exploring how you can get started and explaining some of the pitfalls for your consideration. So we'll hand over to you now, Jez, to share the potential of participatory budgeting. Thanks again.
Thank you. And yeah, the first rule of participatory budgeting is to call it PB rather than participatory budgeting.
That might help.
Bit of a mouthful. So I'm just sharing my presentation now, and I hope that can be seen by everybody. And if we're ready, I will just jump straight into my first slide. So yeah, I'm a director at Shared Future CIC. We're a social enterprise based in the northwest of England. I've been working on participatory budgeting, or PB, for about 20 years. And our social enterprise also does a lot of other things, citizens, juries and assemblies, particularly on climate change. We do some work on social economy development, so that's like social enterprises and community businesses. We've got projects running across the UK and sometimes internationally, and we sometimes do evaluation and reviews of engagement programs, and I'll reference one of those a bit later on. So what is participatory budgeting? Well, there's a quote from the UK government a few years ago. So PB is the process of directly involving local people in making decisions on the priorities and spendings for a defined amount of the public budget. So that's all a bit of a mouthful. So really it's about that interaction between citizens who may have lots of ideas about what they want doing and people with authority over budgets and how they respond. So are they just going to be that sort of faceless bureaucrat who says, we know what we do, we know what we've got our own ideas, what do you think of them, and opens that out. So I like the quote from Brazil that was where PB started many, many years ago. If it feels like we've decided it's PB, if it feels like someone else has decided, it isn't. So that's very much about the sense of autonomy and power that citizens get through this process. So some characteristics of a good quality PB: it's about real money. So this isn't a kind of shadow exercise. It's about an actual commitment of resources over to residents, to citizens who will directly decide how it's being spent. So that could be money from parish precepts, it could be from partners, it could be from money from the private sector if you can bring it in. So any resource that you have available could be more participatory in the way it's spent. So it's not about consultation. Citizens also generate ideas. It's not just about responding to a preset number of options. Ideally, it's co-designed. That means that there's a sort of working group of residents who come together with the parish council or the town council or whoever's delivering it and actually shape it so that it fits their needs. It's more than just voting. So the vote is an important part of PB, but there's also spaces for deliberation and for people to share their perspectives and their lived experience. Generally, it's about trying to promote equity, to redistribute resources from where perhaps there's too much to where there's too little. There's an aspect of accountability and openness, so it's about trying to make sure you communicate in ways that are meaningful to everyday citizens. So there's a kind of culture change involved in that, and really essentially it needs to be repeated and grow over a number of cycles. And I love this quote: the truth of our aspirations isn't found in our vision, it's found in our budget. So that's where power really lies within local councils, the ability to spend money. So there are two possible forms of PB. The first one is participatory grants. That's what most people in the UK have experienced. So we'll talk a bit more about that. But there is another aspect, and that's the more traditional or the way that it's done outside of the UK, which is about mainstreaming. So it's about how citizens can shape the services and investments of local government itself. So I suppose the first is money being handed as grants to citizens to take action themselves, and the other is about how citizens change how spending is happening, done by the parish or town council. So the small grants, typically a grants pot, 20, 30, 50,000 pounds are sort of typical amounts. They generally will have a name. You decide, community chest, the big dish out. So you don't call it PB, but you call it something kind of slightly more sexy than that. Bidders who come forward, rather than it being decided by a panel of experts, actually present all their proposals in an open meeting to anybody in the community who wants to turn up, and then everybody gets a chance to vote, and vote multiple times for a number of projects. And it's been shown to be very effective in engaging, networking and enthusing people, particularly if it's done on a repeated basis. And sometimes you can get up to 300, 400, 500 people coming along to some of these events. Lots of different ways of running them. I have to say the leaders of participatory budgeting at the moment in the UK is in Scotland. They've had a long tradition of trying to empower communities and citizens. They've got a big commitment to PB. They spend money on resourcing it and developing it and learning networks. And it comes out of this fundamental belief that the best people to decide the future of our communities are the people who live in those communities. And most recently, we were commissioned to review a whole range of participatory budgeting processes that had happened across Gwent in South Wales. So this was health money. So it was mainly focused around community wellbeing initiatives, but they were partnerships between the local authorities or town councils and health bodies linked to the Newry Health Trust. And they'd done lots of PB, but they hadn't got an overview really. So they brought us in to develop, to review what they'd done already with their many different processes. They'd spent well over £1 million through PB in different communities of Blaenau, Gwent, Torfaen, Monmouthshire, Newport, and now Caerphilly is about to start. And we also developed a guide, an evaluation toolkit on the future, on where they might take it and how to evaluate your own PB process. And that guide is freely available on our website and might be useful to look at. And I know the presentation might be sent around so you can access those links. So we developed a whole set of indicators about what is important if you're trying to measure the quality of your PB process. So how inclusive and cohesive is it? Are citizens being respected? Are citizens respecting each other? Is it a safe and nurturing community? Are people able to make the best of their lives? Is there reducing inequalities, particularly health inequalities in this case? How resilient were those communities? How able to solve their own problems? How aspirational and responsible for themselves and for others did people feel? Were there any impacts on individual prosperity? How active and healthy were people? And whether it contributed to a vibrant culture. So a whole set of indicators, things that PB could achieve if it was done well. And we surveyed a lot of local people who have been involved, and the things that people said PB had a lot of impact on was supporting local causes that made a difference in the community. So this was the grant making form. It improved social connections and goodwill in the community, just bringing people together to share their ideas and vote on other projects, kind of developed lots of new relationships and surprising relationships. It encouraged individuals to play an active role in their community, so get involved in volunteering. They were more aware of what other things were going on in their community, that it was accessible and they felt they could take part. It encouraged generally a more caring and supportive community. The role of altruism within PB, the fact that you're gifting money to others in your community is a really important relationship. And it overall contributed to being a better place to live, work, learn and play. So all of these indicators kind of related to the theme of community empowerment. So the sense of agency, the sense of we can do that here, that comes from a well-run participatory grant process. So just about finished my whistle-stop presentation. I love this quote: "The money is the bait, not the fish." I know money is very constrained within at all levels of government, but you know, parishes and town councils do have precepts, and they could even raise a precept on the basis that that precept, that additional, would be spent through some sort of democratic process. But really, the most important thing is not the money itself, but the interactions that happen as a result of it, the surprising follow-ons that occur. So my takeaways are: you really need to involve residents in design. Always do with, not to, people. Work with stakeholders. Town and parish councils are resource constrained, but there are other people who may be able to contribute. So build scale through partnerships. Plan ahead. These things do take some time to get going. It does take some administrative work. Focus on creating new engagement, find out different ways to reach people, how to get to those who are maybe isolated in their homes or maybe unconfident about taking part. Ask them, what would it take for you to be involved in this process? Keep it fun and about people, and really find multiple ways to engage. And I know we're going to hear next about some online engagement, but think how you can use all of the resources that you have to reach out as widely as possible. And so that's it, really, just a very whistle-stop tour. On our website, we've got lots of resources and toolkits. You can bring us in to be consultants, and we're always happy to chat.